So hello everyone, my name is Reese Tomlin and I'm studying the MSc in Animal Welfare, Science, Ethics and Law at the University of Winchester. Today we're going to talk about the welfare issues in captive aquaculture, mainly surrounding the welfare of fish in farming. So aquaculture is the captive raising, care and farming of freshwater, brackish and saltwater animals and plants. We cover species such as Atlantic salmon, rainbow trout, oysters, mussels, seaweed varieties and more. In the UK, we produce roughly 205,000 tonnes of farmed fish per year, with Atlantic salmon dominating the trade, with roughly 45 million individuals raised yearly in the marine category, and rainbow trout being the most popular fish to farm in the freshwater category. Aquatic animals are frequently used by humans, with individuals owning different aquariums and vivariums for ornamental fish. We also use fish for research purposes, and we also use fish as hunting and sport activities. So going forward, we will be focusing on the welfare of fish as they become more important to human activities. There is a growing need for a greater understanding of the welfare standards that should be applied to fish under our care. So fish farming can either be inland, using a different variation of pools, ponds or other watertight containers, or farms can be offshore using different sizes and shapes of net cages. Fish farming is prevalent in coastal zones where there is easy access from the shoreline for safe operation and processing of the fish and transport of the fish as well. This form of farming is heavily utilised, which is affecting current shipping lanes. It's also affecting local fishing and tourism and conservation efforts due to the large amount of bio-waste that fisheries produce offshore. So offshore fish farming is initially a higher cost process, as companies will need to ensure that they survey the seabeds for anchoring and mooring systems. The cost increases even higher if they're in deeper water. So currently there are around 750 registered fish farms in the UK, and worldwide 41 million workers are involved in the industry. So for coastal areas, aquaculture-related businesses are vital for individuals to be able to support their families and themselves, and they're also really important for the local economies. So fish farming has helped improve the development of medications, aeration systems, filtration systems, and the creation of different foods for fish throughout both commercial and private endeavours. Fish farming has also helped lower the dependence on wild-caught specimens, which is increasingly important as most capture fisheries, so wild areas of fishing, are on the verge of being fully exploited or have passed the brink of exploitation. So being able to breed and raise fish on farms is an important part of conserving wild populations. Successful fish farms are able to contribute more financial support for conservation and the study of different types of care for fish and how to look after the environment, which they are likely to do, so long as they have an understanding of why it's important to do that and what they can gain from it. So welfare is a broad word that covers multiple aspects of an animal's life, including the animal's normal biological functions, the emotional state, and including not having to experience pain or fear, and the animal is able to express normal behaviours. Industry leaders have been supportive of increasing the welfare of an animal in their care due to public pressure, and having joined in on debates and helping improve the funding of research to push the progression of improvements, but this is primarily because of the public pressure. There are legal guidelines set out that companies have to follow to provide animals with the basic welfare standards. Guidelines come from the Farm to Animal Welfare Council, the FAWC, and fish are also covered under the Animal Welfare Act 2006, where the farmers have to follow the 5 freedoms. The 5 freedoms are the animal need for a suitable environment, its need for a suitable diet, its need to be able to exhibit normal behaviour patterns, any need it has to be housed with or apart from other animals, and its need to be protected from pain, suffering, injury and disease. The government provides companies with assessment criteria to ensure that welfare of farmed fish is at an appropriate level. The image on the screen shows the increase in interest in fish welfare studies as time has gone on. So stress is defined as physical or chemical factors causing the body to react in ways that may contribute to disease and death. Working towards preventing stress that is brought on by husbandry and general aquaculture practices is vital, especially in helping improving welfare standards for the animals within the farms. Stress is a result of various industry practices that may not be carried out in the most sensitive ways, including handling, sorting, and transportation. So stress hormones are released into the water by fish, which then alerts other fish and impacts the stress levels of those, and it becomes a domino effect. These stress hormones also impact the water quality, which then increases stress levels. So it goes around in a big circle. The more stress an animal is subjected to, the higher the mortality rate will be for the whole enclosure. Multiple factors that we will discuss today are either closely related to stress or a direct result of stress in the system. Disease and parasites are commonplace in low welfare aquaculture systems, and many different methods of treatment and prevention are used throughout the industry. RAS and lumpfish are used to reduce sea lice populations in salmon farming. However, unfortunately, both fish, wrasse and lumpfish, are caught from the wild, so there's welfare issues surrounding using these fish as well. They can deplete the numbers of sea lice in fish. However, if there's not enough sea lice, there's welfare concerns because they then haven't got a food source to be able to survive in the system. Now, bacterial infections and fungal disease and external protozoan parasites are among the highest cause of fish loss within commercial aquaculture stock. And just like how stress can be a cause of many issues relating to welfare, there are environmental factors that cause the susceptibility of fish to disease and parasites, including water quality, hypoxia, lack of water flow, lack of dissolved oxygen, and an abundance of waste. The top image is a platy with popeye and dropsy, both internal parasites, and the Serpe tetra has a fungal infection at the top near its dorsal fin. So water quality is the most important thing when it comes to keeping fish. It relates to the chemical balances in the water, ensuring a constant equilibrium to be able to sustain life. The appropriate water quality is vital to create a successful yield and healthy fish, and it's a difference between a fish just surviving to a fish thriving. So dissolved oxygen levels must stay above 5 milligrams per litre, as many fish cannot breathe atmospheric air. This is essential for animals to be able to survive in water. While some fish may be more tolerant of lower levels of oxygen, for long periods of time, with low levels of oxygen, the fish get highly stressed. Now, each water system has its own carrying capacity, where it can support the animals within the system with the resources it has. One of the main resources is dissolved oxygen within the water. The carrying capacity can be derived from oxygen consumption, rate of the fish, and the response their bodies have in relation to carbon dioxide, ammonia, and other toxic waste produced. Unlike wild populations, captive fish are unable to live in appropriate living conditions, so these will cause chemical imbalances in the water, in the fish, and will make them more susceptible to disease and parasites. So handling. Handling is a common thing to happen in aquaculture industry. Fish need moving, medication application needs to be carried out. Harvesting is also done with physical contact through nets and by hand. So during handling processes, mucus layers are removed and damaged during physical contact, resulting in the fish's protective barrier being removed, increasing the susceptibility to disease. It increases water uptake in freshwater fish and dehydration in saltwater fish as well. Less mucus layers cause fish to have to expend more energy to swim. In a study by Raposo de Magalhães and et al. In 2020, groups of fish were subjected to one of 3 different stresses, including hypoxia, overcrowding, and net handling. The data collected showed that net handling caused high levels of cortisol and glucose and high levels of stress compared to the other test conditions. As well as that, vaccination use in the industry has increased, and it does help prevent the number of outbreaks of disease. Unfortunately, this does cause increased handling, which we've said is detrimental to the health of the fish and can cause another cycle of disease susceptibility. So slaughter. So it is inevitable that farmed fish will be slaughtered in their prime. There are multiple ways that this can be done. Unfortunately, the industry standard for slaughtering fish is to simply take them out of the water and cause them to suffocate. So fish also need to be fasted for over a week. Unfortunately, there is a current lack of research to prove whether fasting an animal can cause an impact on their welfare, as there are conditions in the wild where an animal will be unable to eat due to local food shortages. After fasting, the standard method of slaughter is using old-style methods of asphyxiation. So a fish is basically taken out of the water to suffocate. This causes a high amount of stress, as it can take some species 5 minutes to suffocate, and other species it can take just over an hour to complete the suffocation. This process of slaughter is used for fish that are not for human consumption, that are for human consumption, but those that are for non-human consumption can have pharmacological methods used to prevent suffering. Now, some species are immersed in ice-cold water or placed on ice before being asphyxiated, and others are killed by simply severing gills or the caudal fin, evisceration, being dumped into water perfused with carbon dioxide, which is a method banned in many countries in the EU, or shot with a harpoon-type instrument, hoisted out of the water and having their brain destroyed, and this is the primary method for tuna. Now, fish under 1 kilogram can be killed by electric stunning, and then leaving them to asphyxiate on ice to stop them being able to suffer as much through this process. Now, while stunning can be used, it is not an industry standard process, with many companies citing the limited fish size for stunning and offshore farming as the main reasons. Obviously, welfare is blatantly compromised when it comes to the slaughtering of fish, as many are still fully conscious during the process and simply left to suffer for prolonged periods of time. This fully contrasts the methods of slaughter for mammals and birds, where they're unconscious before their death. So, for improvements in the future, there needs to be increased industry standards for welfare overall. Regular assessments of water quality and increasing research into how this can be improved must be done. We need to carry out intensive research into the way that fish are slaughtered and how the welfare of the fish at the time of the harvest can be improved. This can then in turn potentially improve the quality of the meat produced. There also needs to be an introduction of the overall standard of how fish are handled and the number of individuals that animals are kept in a pen. Current projects, which you can see in the image, are being undertaken to investigate how moving fish farming offshore can increase the quality of the fish, the welfare standards for the fish, and improving the impact on environment. Moving fish farms offshore immediately allows there to be a lesser impact on the environment due to the stronger currents being able to move waste away from the immediate area and dissipating this waste and improving water quality. Handling and harvesting practices also need to be improved. As stated, handling is the highest factor of stress for a fish, and methods should be taken into consideration, as well as the amount of times fish are handled and why they're handled so many times. Decreasing this amount of time the animal handled will avoid the risk of damaging mucous membranes and increasing susceptibility of disease and parasites, which immediately would increase the welfare standards of the fish. And welfare standards at harvest at the moment are questionable at the least. Allowing an animal to suffer for up to 1 hour before death should not be allowed. Methods for harvesting fish need to be immediately reviewed, and new methods must be introduced. With the majority of species not being electronically stunned before slaughter, there is a blatant lack of not only ethical understanding, but there is a lack of moral understanding. We provide mammals with higher welfare standards at the time of slaughter, but currently we don't provide fish with the same standards of welfare. So these are the references for this slideshow today, and I will go through them. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope it showed some of the issues that are affecting welfare of fish in aquaculture systems.